You're throwing your life away. My father's voice boomed across the dinner table, making the expensive china rattle. 5 years at Stanford, and this is what you do with your engineering degree? I kept my expression neutral, pushing the untouched food around my plate. Our monthly family dinners had become increasingly tense since I'd quit my prestigious position at Goldman Sachs to start my tech company. Michael, my mother chimed in, her voice dripping with disappointment. Your sister just made junior partner at her law firm. And what are you doing? Playing with computers in your garage? I glanced at my sister Amanda, who was deliberately avoiding eye contact while adjusting her Cartier watch. A recent gift to herself for that promotion they couldn't stop mentioning. Actually, I said quietly, we just secured our Series B funding. Series B, Series whatever, Dad interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. Real success means something tangible. Like this building. He gestured to the window of their 45th floor apartment in the Maxwell Tower, where his investment firm occupied 3 floors. 30 years I've worked here, built my reputation. That's real success. Little did he know that I'd just signed the final papers this morning. Maxwell Tower now belonged to my company, Novatech Solutions. But I kept that information to myself, just like I'd kept quiet about a lot of things over the past 3 years. Speaking of the building, my mother continued, Thomas Reynolds' son is looking for tech people at his firm. They have an office on the 30th floor. I could put in a word. I'm not interested in working for someone else, Mom. Then you'll never amount to anything. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Look at you, 30 years old, no real job, no marriage prospects, living in that tiny apartment. I had to suppress a smile at that last part. My tiny apartment was actually a 5,000 square foot penthouse in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. But they'd never visited, too embarrassed by my failure to even see where I lived. The tech industry is volatile. Amanda finally spoke up, her lawyer voice in full effect. You should listen to Dad. At least take a real position somewhere respectable while you figure things out. The irony was almost too much. Novatech Solutions had revolutionized quantum computing security. We were valued at $4.2 billion after our last funding round. But my family was too busy comparing me to their narrow definition of success to even Google my company. How are you even paying your bills? Mom asked, genuine concern in her voice. We haven't seen any withdrawals from your trust fund. Because I haven't touched it, I replied, setting down my fork. I'm doing fine, Mom. Fine. Dad scoffed. You wear the same clothes every time we see you. That watch probably came from Target. When was the last time you took a proper vacation? I glanced down at my Target watch. Actually a limited edition Patek Philippe that cost more than their monthly mortgage. And my same old clothes. A bespoke Tom Ford suit I wore because it was comfortable, not to show off. Actually, I said, standing up, I should get going. Early meeting tomorrow. Meeting? Dad laughed harshly. In your garage with those other dropouts? Those dropouts included 2 MIT PhDs and a former NASA engineer, but I let that slide too. Something like that. As I headed for the door, my father called after me. The rent's due next week for the firm. When I sign that check, I want you to think about what real success looks like. If he only knew he'd be signing that check to my company. My phone buzzed as I reached the elevator. It was Sarah, my CFO. Building acquisition complete. Should we send the notices to tenants tomorrow? Wait until Monday, I texted back. Let them enjoy their weekend. In the parking garage, I bypassed my usual Tesla and took my old Honda Civic. The car my parents always criticized me for keeping. It was my reminder of where I started, coding in that garage they loved to mock. As I drove home, I thought about the journey that had led here. 3 years ago, I discovered a fundamental flaw in traditional encryption methods that would become devastating in the quantum computing era. Everyone said my solution was impossible. Goldman Sachs even laughed me out of the building when I tried to warn them. So I quit. Sold everything except my old Civic, moved into a tiny studio apartment, and worked 20-hour days developing what would become Novatech's core technology. My family saw it as a breakdown. My father called it a quarter-life crisis. The first year was brutal. I lived on ramen and coffee, coding until my eyes burned. My parents' disappointment was a constant background noise, along with Amanda's helpful job listings and Mom's attempts to set me up with successful men who could save me from my phase. Then it happened. Our encryption method worked. Really worked. The kind of work that made government agencies sit up and take notice. Tech giants started calling. Venture capitalists began circling. I pulled into my building's private garage, nodding to the security guard who knew to keep my real identity quiet. In the private elevator to my penthouse, I loosened my tie and checked my phone again. Another text from Sarah. Wall Street Journal wants to run the story about the Maxwell Tower acquisition on Monday. Your father's firm is mentioned specifically. Should we delay? I thought about dinner, about all the dinners before it. About every dismissive comment, every comparison to Amanda, every helpful suggestion that felt like a knife twist. Run it Monday, I texted back. It's time they knew. Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a nuclear explosion. I was in my real office, the entire top floor of our headquarters, when the Wall Street Journal article dropped. Nova Tech Solutions acquires Maxwell Tower in $890 million deal. Subheading: Tech's rising star continues expansion with landmark purchase. Sarah appeared in my doorway, tablet in hand. Your father's called 17 times in the last hour. Your mother's called 23. Your sister sent 38 texts. I glanced at my phone, deliberately set to silent. The screen was a cascade of notifications, including several all-caps messages from Dad. What is the meaning of this? And call me immediately. Has the building management delivered the new lease terms? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Being distributed now. Sarah couldn't quite hide her smile. Including the notice about the 15% rent increase for all firms that haven't upgraded their cybersecurity to meet modern standards. My father's firm was notorious for running outdated systems. I'd tried to warn them about their vulnerabilities 2 years ago. They dismissed me as paranoid. The intercom buzzed. Sir, your family is in the lobby. They're quite insistent about seeing you. I straightened my custom-made suit. No point hiding anymore, and nodded to Sarah. Send them up. The private elevator opened 3 minutes later. Dad burst out first, face red, waving a newspaper. Mom followed, looking shell-shocked. Amanda brought up the rear, her lawyer face firmly in place. What kind of joke is this? Dad demanded, slapping the Wall Street Journal onto my desk. I leaned back in my chair, taking in their expressions as they finally noticed their surroundings. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The state-of-the-art technology seamlessly integrated into every surface. The quiet hum of success they'd been too blind to see. It's not a joke, I replied calmly. Nova Tech Solutions now owns Maxwell Tower, along with 6 other commercial properties in the downtown area. But, Mom sank into one of the visitor chairs. You were struggling, living in a garage. I was working in a garage, I corrected. There's a difference. And I was never struggling. I just didn't feel the need to flaunt my success. Amanda stepped forward, lawyer mode fully engaged. The article says Nova Tech is valued at over $4 billion. That you've revolutionized quantum encryption. That governments and major corporations are your clients. All true. Why didn't you tell us? She demanded. I stood up, walking to the window. I tried. Remember last Christmas? When I wanted to discuss the security vulnerabilities in Dad's firm's systems. You all laughed and asked if I'd learned about computers at Target. Dad's face flushed darker. Now see here. No, you see, I turned back to them. For 3 years I've watched you mock my choices, dismiss my work, and treat me like a failure. Not once did you ask what I was actually doing. Not once did you show any interest beyond comparing me to your narrow definition of success. But the rent increase. Dad sputtered. You can't. Actually, I can. It's standard practice to bring all tenants up to modern security standards. We're even offering a discount if you contract Nova Tech to handle the upgrades. Mom was shaking her head slowly. All this time. Those dinners when we thought you couldn't afford food. I own 3 restaurants in the city, I said quietly. Including the one you celebrated Amanda's promotion at last month. Amanda's eyes widened. The one with the 2-year waiting list? Being the owner helps with reservations. I smiled slightly. Though you never did ask how I got them for you on short notice. The silence that followed was deafening. My family stood there, 3 successful people by traditional standards, finally seeing the empire I'd built while they were too busy criticizing my path to notice. Sarah appeared in the doorway again. Sorry to interrupt, but the Pentagon is on line 1. And the CEO of Goldman Sachs would like to move your lunch meeting up. Dad's jaw dropped. Mom clutched her designer handbag tighter. Amanda looked like she was re-evaluating every interaction we'd had over the past 3 years. Tell the Pentagon I'll call back in 10 minutes, I said. And inform Goldman I'll keep our original lunchtime. They can wait. The same Goldman Sachs that had laughed me out of their office 3 years ago was now courting my business. The irony wasn't lost on my family. All those times we tried to help you. Mom began. Help me. I interrupted. You tried to force me into a box that wasn't mine. You tried to make me follow a path that wasn't right for me. That's not help, Mom. That's control. The next few weeks were a study in family dynamics under pressure. My parents and sister cycled through various stages of shock, denial, and eventually a grudging acceptance of the new reality. The family dinner tradition continued, but now in my penthouse, a space that made their luxury apartment look modest in comparison. I still can't believe this is where you live, Mom said during their first visit, running her hand along my custom marble countertops. All this time we thought. You thought what you wanted to think, I replied, setting down the Chateau Lafite Rothschild I'd been saving for this occasion. It was easier than accepting that success might look different than your expectations. Dad stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring at the city sprawled below. His firm had finally agreed to the security upgrades, though not without considerable grumbling. The initial report had revealed vulnerabilities that could have bankrupted them. The security team said our entire system was. He paused, swallowing his pride, primitive. That we were lucky we hadn't been hacked. I tried to tell you that 2 years ago, I reminded him, pouring the wine. During that dinner where you said I was playing with computers. Amanda, who had been unusually quiet since the revelation, spoke up. My firm's been trying to get a meeting with Nova Tech's legal team for months. That was you too. I nodded. Your firm's cybersecurity is almost as outdated as Dad's. I didn't want to approve any contracts until that was addressed. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken realizations. My family was finally seeing not just my success but the depth of their own blindness. Sarah appeared in the doorway. She had a knack for perfect timing. Sorry to interrupt, but the governor is on the line about the new tech initiative. Tell him I'll call back after dinner, I replied. Family time. My parents exchanged glances. This was the third call I'd delayed for them. First the Pentagon, then Goldman Sachs, now the governor. Their disappointment of a son was apparently more important than they'd realized. About that, Mom said hesitantly, we've been thinking, maybe we were wrong. About your choices, your path. Maybe. Amanda interrupted, surprising us all. We were completely wrong. While we were measuring success by corner offices and country club memberships, Michael was revolutionizing an entire industry. Dad turned from the window, his face showing an emotion I'd never seen before, respect. The security team explained what your encryption method does. They said it's going to change everything when quantum computing becomes mainstream. It already is changing everything, I said quietly. Those dropouts you mocked? We're designing the architecture for the next generation of global cybersecurity. The garage you ridiculed? That's where we developed the algorithm that every major bank now uses. Mom wiped a tear from her eye. We just wanted you to be successful. I am successful, I cut in. Just not in the way you imagined. And that's the problem. You couldn't imagine success looking any different than your own path. The evening continued, and gradually the conversation shifted. Instead of criticizing my choices, they started asking about them. Instead of pushing their vision of success, they began trying to understand mine. A month later, I received an unexpected visit from Amanda at my office. She looked different. Less polished, more genuine. I quit the firm, she announced without preamble. I raised an eyebrow. The junior partnership you were so proud of? I realized something, she said, sitting down. I was never proud of it. I was proud that our parents were proud. There's a difference. He pulled out a business plan. I want to start my own practice, focusing on tech law and digital rights. And I could use your advice. Not your money, she added quickly, just your experience in building something from scratch. It was the first time any of my family had asked for my advice rather than trying to give it. Dad changed too in his own way. He started attending tech seminars, trying to understand the industry he'd dismissed for so long. Mom stopped sending me profiles of successful, potential partners and started actually getting to know the people in my life. During one family dinner about 6 months after the revelation, Dad cleared his throat. "Son, I've been thinking about retiring." I looked up from my plate. "Oh. The firm, it's not keeping up. Even with the security upgrades, we're behind the times. I was wondering." He paused, straightening his shoulders. "Would Novatech be interested in acquiring it? Not as a favor," he added quickly, "but as a business decision. We have some clients that might be valuable." It was the first time he'd ever approached me as a business equal rather than a disappointing son. "Send the proposal to our acquisitions team," I replied. "They'll evaluate it fairly." He nodded, understanding the boundary I was setting. No special treatment, no family favors, just business. Later that night, after everyone had left, I stood in my office at home, looking at an old photo. It showed me in that garage they'd mocked so much, surrounded by computers, looking exhausted but happy. I'd known then what I was building even if no one else could see it. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. "Forbes wants to do a cover story. The Silent Revolution. How Novatech's Michael Chun Changed the Future of Security." I smiled, thinking of all the family dinners where they'd bemoaned my lack of real achievements. "Approve it," I texted back. "But make sure they mention the garage. Because sometimes the biggest success isn't in proving others wrong. It's in proving yourself right. And sometimes the best revenge isn't in making others pay rent, but in making them see that their definition of success was too small to begin with." I picked up my old Honda Civic keys, heading out for a late-night drive. Some habits don't change even when everything else does. And some lessons, like the value of staying true to your vision, even when no one else believes in it, are worth more than all the corner offices in the world.